Ben asks, how do you counter the truth is subjective and that's your truth as an answer from people when sharing the gospel? That's your truth.
It's interesting. There's a huge contradiction in some of this stuff. You know, I read a meme the other day which said there is nothing more powerful than telling your truth. And I thought, well, if it's your truth, then there's nothing less powerful. I think everyone's joined the dots, right? Which is that if it's only your truth, it can't change anything. It can't do anything. It can't, I mean, who cares? Walk on. And I guess one of the throwaway lines I often use when people come up with, you know, they have a lot of counters. Like you might say something and they might say, oh, but you wouldn't know what it's like to be a victim, or you don't have any lived experience, or well, that's your truth. I very often just use the line, unless it's true. And they'll say, but you don't, you know, Martin, you know, I had someone come to me the other day because I said something on my Facebook about men and women and relate, oh, you've never had a family, you would. And I said, well, unless it's true, right? Get them thinking like that, because some things are true. And I would use something like that just to make them see. You know, you can use other facts as well and then just say, well, see, that is true and it matters for you. But I think one of the dangers we have is that it's a great pressure release valve to say, well, that's what I think, or I personally believe, and to retreat into that sort of subjective mindset. The Apostle Paul never went out preaching saying, this is true for me. The thing that upset people was that he said, this is true for you. And I guess there was another moment on Q&A where they said, well, does Trent have to repent? And I said, well, God commands all people everywhere to repent. Well, this is true for you. I'd just say, let's just reflect on strictly speaking in those terms. You will sort of ruffle feathers when you do that, and you'll be surprised how often you retreat back to, oh, well, in my opinion. Oh, well, if you don't believe it, that's fine. I don't think that does the job. I think we need to actually speak about truth as true for all. And we can be very different on that. And yes, it will ruffle feathers, but here's the other thing to remember. Truth is most offensive at the very point where it's most relevant. A person has a freak out when you say something because it touches them, because it pokes them. And we want to back away and go, oh, it's all right, that's just what I think, you know. No, don't. Just let it sit. Just let it sit. And have practice doing that. And you will provoke further conversations. And you might lose the odd friend, but here's the other thing. There is something about this, though. You may lose the odd friends. But there's a great old saying that my old boss used to say, Lyle Shelton, where he said, but you might have put a rock in their shoe. And very often you do. You put a rock in their shoe. And I'm not always too worried sometimes if people get a little bit rankled by something, because I think it might stick with them. It might just be the thing that is in their conscience that speaks to them. Because love, and I'm going on now, but let me just say this. To love a neighbour is not to simply dance around their feelings. Because then you're defining love by their feelings. That's not love. We need to make sure that our love of neighbour is grounded in their truest and highest interests, as God would define it. Love is not about their feelings, it's about what God requires. And so sometimes love is to press that hot button. Sometimes love is to go to that place that makes someone uncomfortable. For you as well. It's not just, we all get made uncomfortable sometimes, and sometimes it means we have to change. And Jesus was the greatest example of that. The Samaritan woman, go and get your husband. Well, don't go there. Gosh. The rich young ruler, I'll follow you, all the rest of it. What does he say? Sell everything you have. He touches Nicodemus, the righteous man that had done so much good in all of his days in his life, and Jesus says, you've got to be born again, you need to start all over. Or indeed, he says to the Pharisees, they say, we're children of Abraham. He says, actually, you're children of Satan because you can't stop sinning. You've got to realize that there is a higher interest here. And yes, it requires judgment and wisdom, and don't come off as all, socially inept. But I think we definitely err too far on the side of not challenging people. So I'd say if someone says, oh, that's your truth, just keep challenging them. Break through it.
So